Okay, Tom, you were going to tell me about your. Go ahead and tell me about the idea or where you are.
Yeah, so yeah, just quickly, my background is in computer science. In my final years, I'm here in London. That's where I did my degree. My final year, I won a business plan competition, and I started my own company, raised some money, and then we raised some more money, hired a team of engineers, etc. I led the sort of the product effort. It's sort of a B2B software company, and yeah, during the pandemic, my interests have shifted towards machine learning, and motivated by what I saw as a problem of polarization generally. And not just polarization, just problem with sense making. Just trying to figure out for myself, concretely, early on in the pandemic, just trying to work out what actually is what's going on, how serious the threat from the COVID-19 virus was to me personally, but more broadly, how long is it going to be a problem? I was trying to make some decisions regarding my business. How should I put it on pause because it was really badly affected by it? Should I try and do something else for a couple of years? These types of decisions, and I couldn't really find anywhere where I could get a good sense of a good sort of source of information, so reliable. I wasn't reliable when I wasn't interested in joining any particular team, or I wasn't interested in clinging on to a particular view of the situation. I just wanted to know what's true, and it was one of these kind of rare black swan events where it was really unexpected. I mean, people had been expecting a pandemic, but it's just the way that, it presented itself. It certainly was, to most people, something completely new, unexpected. And I think that tested the kind of the knowledge system in society, and how people kind of reacted to new information, new situation that they suddenly found themselves in, and trying to make sense of it. And I thought that went really, really badly, and a lot of very intelligent people got it completely wrong in one way or the other, or at some point, and that was kind of fascinating, how and also how different people got it wrong from a sort of different point of view, where the blind spots were, at least the way I saw them, sort of that blind spots, what they were worried about, what they were not worried about, for instance, what they thought was warranted, what kind of recommendations they were making, and what, whether they felt like they were warranted making these sorts of, recommendations. So, for instance, if you're a doctor, like a lot of doctors were recommending particular policy decisions, which, I thought, was on reflection a little bit odd. Without further without further kind of qualification, and just being a very good doctor and an expert in a particular area, then for instance, again, recommending policy decisions, I thought was sort of, but that's just one example out of 100. Not to mention, the obvious crazy conspiracy theories around it. So again, a new situation, kind of, we couldn't make sense of it, just find what's true, and generally people entertaining themselves by joining a team and just trying to dunk on the opposite team and just make them into immoral people and stuff, just not looking for truth. I mean, obviously there were many exceptions to this, but in general that was my impression. But that's just one problem. There's many other issues in the world, and many opportunities. So I think I focus more on opportunities rather than problems in the world, and I think there's many opportunities that we could capitalize on, like the anti-aging research. We get that right. There's a lot of benefits to it. Stuff like immigration, getting immigration rights. I mean, there's a lot that, for instance, in my case, Britain could immensely benefit from getting immigration rights. And economic policy and all those things. The trouble is the whole sort of sense making system. So you've got researchers, people doing experiments in the lab, doing statistical research, qualitative, quantitative, trying to answer some basic questions. But then you've got people who kind of disseminate that research and try and synthesize it, pull it together, come up with a summary, and then digest it and present it to the public. So that's like another big layer in the system. And then there's people who that you've got journalists, you've got people who opinions about it, but it's not that one person in the system can be an expert on everything, and it's very difficult to pull that sort of all together for any particular individual. So you have an issue like climate change, where I mean, it's not good enough to be a climate scientist, in my view. I mean, you can definitely be well versed enough to read the IPCC report, but then it's a multifaceted issue. You also have to be an energy expert, and not to mention geopolitics, and not to mention being a kind of a good sort of, might call it a forecaster, someone who knows or has a sense what they don't know yet, and has at least good sense of the information that we still need to make a decision, any kind of sort of policy decision, and not to even mention stuff like ethics. If some group of people needs to be sacrificed to some other group of people or other beings, let's say, like, is this the right thing to do? And it's not obvious. I mean, if you just take any individual who is not even aware, that's the problem, is that they're not even aware of these questions. They just take the view that they are used to and then kind of project it and use that to make a decision. So there's a lot of complex things like that involve deep expertise. And even for an intelligent person, like who has good background and good education, delving into a new topic can be quite confusing. It takes a lot of time to get up to speed. So one of the aims of my project, the sort of project Steelman, would be to have be able to see arguments for both sides laid out in a way that relates them somehow to one another, and can give you a very quick overview and enable you to familiarize yourself with the sides of the argument that you're not familiar with. Mm-hmm. Very quickly. Sort of the way that you can do that with some of the new scientific paper analysis tools. Some of them are quite openly available, like connected papers. So for instance, I do quite a lot of ML if I need to find out more about a particular type of architecture, particular type of task. I start with a paper that I just randomly saw on Twitter, but I can quickly see, not just from references, but from similarities and other features of that paper. I can quickly see like what is the seminal paper behind it all. Is this, what is, how strong is the evidence? What is what other potential avenues are being pursued? And what are the results in this area? And I can do that quite well now. And I think something like this should be possible for arguments in general, probably starting with a particular area of focus, but with the view of having it as a general purpose tool in the end.
Awesome. So for this project, what's your kind of vision for it at the moment? Is it this would be a business that would be self-funding, for profit, or just, are you just, if you're at the beginning, is it just kind of exploring the problem and potential solution?
I'm just at the beginning, just exploring. I definitely would prefer it to be a for-profit business, the way that a GitHub is a for-profit business. So it would be, the tools would be available and to the public, or just to anyone. Definitely, that's one of the, anything like this has to be freely available. However, there might be some, let's call it enterprise features if you were to, let's say, I don't want to get into like how this would be monetized. It might not be monetized like GitHub. It might be monetized like, but through like affiliate links, just, having, by linking into, people's blogs and Patreon accounts and things like that, people who are kind of the authors of certain claims, let's say, on this model, on this particular model. So it could be just, a way to, get indexed by Google and then get send traffic in various directions and things. So it's too early for that, but I'm definitely, I think that's sort of pulling back a little bit. I think anything successful in this space has to have a commercial angle to it, where the incentives are to build the best product. It has to be a very good product, and there's a lot of work that goes into tooling, good user interface, stuff that that is usually neglected with open source projects. In my experience, it takes a team of people who can, and a lot of resources to build a great user interface, to test it all, to make sure it's all sleek, works across platforms. A lot of boring stuff in many ways, but it's, I kind of envision it like having a sleek interface and sort of advancing into, maybe starting off as one of these projects that a couple of people build and it kind of takes off, and then we're at a crossroads. What do we do from that? So it'll be a good outcome.
Yeah. So I was gonna kind of try and pair it back to you, kind of what I heard about what the project is. Although I'm reading on your document here what your elevator pitch is on the document. So and that gets to a lot of our projects, is that we do kind of have to have two pitches. One is like, here's the overall vision, and then here's like, to an individual user, how might you use this tool? So the elevator pitch you have on here to the individual user, which is just kind of slightly different than the overall goal of it, is make your writing more persuasive, engaging, and user-friendly to new audiences. Easily embed an interactive reference to a Steelman or other argument you're making. And then you talk about a potential Chrome extension. Is that still kind of your pitch to the average user, or has that evolved since you wrote that?
That's still the pitch, at least one of the. I think to be honest, in order to refine it, I need to. I'm working on an interactive mock-up of this, so this is what I think is going to drive the. What I'm envisaging it is probably having a couple of, hopefully, sort of killer app type of applications, if I'm right, if this can be built, etc., caveats apply. But couple of very obvious sort of benefits and a bunch of side benefits. So again, some of this is sort of hinting at where this could live to begin with. So this could be, I mentioned Chrome extension. This could be something like a plug into a blog sort of forum, discussion forum platform, where you could sort of an author can sort of by doing similarity search for the draft, you could sort of highlight, hey, this is a reference to this type of argument that we're making, you know. So if you take, I came across this forum called lesswrong.com.
Yeah,
I'm sure you're
familiar
familiar
with it.
So there, I think they kind of they have a little sort of if you hover over, you know, an anchor text, they give you a little blurb for the concept definition, which is good. You know, it's sort of it's a similar way of thinking about it. So you know, I don't know exactly where this could live. This could also be something like connectedpapers.com, where, you know, it's a standard. It's probably could be both. You know, again, connected papers have a Chrome extension. You can search from, you can integrate with other sort of things. So yeah, I've got a lot of, you know, it's not a very crystallized, you know, idea. And what I'm looking for right now is a kind of point of leverage, you know, like what's the most high impact interactive prototype that I could create, and where, you know, where I could test, where could I test it, you know, where would be a good place. And I've got a couple of ideas in mind, so for that. But yeah, it's not, yeah, I appreciate it's not a very sort of crystallized you know, pitch, just yeah.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I expect it to evolve as you bounce it off people. Yeah, I mean, mine has evolved in so many different ways. But so what skill set do you bring to this project? Are you a software engineer yourself? Or, I mean, you mentioned doing a lot with ML, but I don't know if you do any front end work yourself or if it's mostly technical.
Yeah, so I can do sort of full stack engineering, but my sort of main skill set is product management. So I like to work with you know, a couple of engineers, really good, sort of from, you know, definitely, you know, I could definitely build stuff from end to end. Probably that's what I'm gonna do to begin with.
Yeah, you
but
could get an early prototype out and do some user testing and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, as quickly as it's warranted and justified, I would, you know, hire, you know, a small team and sort of work very hands-on with them. You know, as soon as I know what I want to build, which is the main, and I have some validations, some hypotheses that work.
Yeah. So yeah, as you're end up kind of like creating this, you know, these prototypes that include a front end, you might kind of let me know what you're doing because I'm working on my own kind of front end for my thing. So there may be something like, oh, I either have something that would be useful or I will derive some use out of something similar. So, you know, we could cut the coding in half or whatever. I could take a piece of it, you know, open source it. And, there might be some synergies there. Yeah, and I might know other people in the space that are working on something similar. That could, you know, use that type of collaborative coding. So that would be interesting. Yeah, if you ever get funding, I'm also for hire, although I'm kind of expensive. So, although I do give a discount to projects in this space. So, but we'll see. Let me see. I had another question there. Yeah. So, I have some opinions on where machine learning can provide value in the space, and also some reasons why some of the people in this space, like people at the Canonical Debate Lab, and might have some concerns when, you know, when people say machine language or argument, or AI. Do you want to kind of chat through that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's hear like
Yeah. So
yeah.
like my project is taking the claims that people make, steelmanning them, and then organizing them. But I also add a scoring system on it. So one of my, like, I'm right now hiring people to go out and do internet research. So try and find all sides of an argument. And then we're trying to figure out how to word it and put it into Reason Score or Golibot. I'm rebranding, or Reasonpedia is now probably the most likely name. And then also Jamie Joyce from Society Library, she recently hired a whole group of people, and they found over, so they were hired to look at the potential closing of the last nuclear plant in California, and they found 9 positions on that debate, and gathered data from over 4,000 pieces of media. So they also look at video and old television things from like 20 years ago, and audio podcasts and stuff. So she has a group of people that are going through all that, and they take each one of those and they steelman them as best they can. And she talks about some interesting stories, like someone talking about climate change and Saturn. And it was like, that just sounds like something you should just dismiss. But she actually looked into it, and there was a germ of truth to that thing that sounds completely crazy. So she's really good at really steel manning. And she really challenges her team, because they'll come and say, well, I can't find any reason why you're not digging far enough. So now there's like 2 different people that have projects that are, and she has some funding. I have none. Well, I'm funding myself, so I'm paying people out of my pocket. And if I can pay a machine learning tool to kind of gather it up, and then then so I might have some resources that I'm spending anyways, that if you have something that could help, then I could redirect some of that. I'd still probably need a person to come in and figure out how to put it in to the argument graph. Although I do think eventually, I think it's within the realm of possibility within the next couple of years that you could build an AI that could go out and bring them all together and steelman them and put them into an argument graph, which is what we tend to do, to show the hierarchical relationship of claims. So I think that's all possible, and maybe even possible now if you spend the time doing it. There are 2 challenges. Well, first of all, some people, and I personally sometimes have an immediate negative reaction when people start bringing machine learning into the space, because one of the challenges, and this isn't a valid concern, it depends on where you're going to use the machine learning, right? Because machine learning can end up with biases the same way the human brain, well, in a different way, but similar to how the human brain does, right? So depending on your training data and how you put it in, which is not an insurmountable challenge. And so one of my concerns is, as far as having it go all the way to the full steel manning and putting it in an argument tree and using my scoring system on it, is that, well, I guess it doesn't matter in the end, is that it's similar to what I'm trying to get away from is any form of heuristics. So, and only a subset of debates and questions can be handled in a logical way. But what I'm trying to do is move things that can be done in a logical fashion into a logical space, rather than us just using our natural heuristics. And if you have some machine learning that is still black boxed, I know they're working on making ways to know exactly why the tool made the decisions it did. And it's kind of just replacing, it's just faster human mistakes rather than eliminating the human mistakes by going to a completely logical thing. But then just talking through it, it doesn't make sense because whether it's a human doing the heuristics or a machine doing it, doing pattern matching, you'll end up putting it into this logical form, and then the logical form will make it apparent where the gaps are. So, yeah, I guess I talked myself out of it. But if you don't have this kind of logical form in there or some way to measure it, the current concern would be that any kind of gaps in the logic or any biases in the system would be hard to detect. Yeah, but yeah, so some people kind of think that you're just going to rely on machine learning completely and then it's going to pop up an answer, right? And that's not what you're trying to do.
No.
But that's why some people kind of will give a negative.
Yeah, no, it's I don't. Yeah, I mean, there's the extreme version is a prompting strategy for for a large language model where you kind of rely on what's been encoded in the weights, and then you're trying to generate abstractive summarization of the argument in this case, or try to figure out a logical structure. And these models, they're obviously very impressive, but it's not a foundation for a reliable tool.
Except I am doing what you just said. I think I'm just not doing it through AI. So I am creating a fully logical model. Not fully though, because there's always a limit, right? But you have your assumptions clearly laid out, and then you're doing logical math up on that to the top. So then humans can quickly find where the assumption that's differ from their assumptions, and then it's kind of a mapping tool.
Yeah,
anyway.
I'd be interested to I mean, I read the document. I think I know, roughly what you're getting at.
Yeah.
I think there's philosophically there's some assumptions about that for instance, just the use of predicate logic in philosophy is it's used, so like it's taught in computer science. Obviously, it's a huge part of that. But to use it, in philosophy to guide decisions, it's a controversial technique. That's one view of logic, for instance. That's just to sort of that's just one example. There's what I've seen a lot is the sort of the less wrong outcome forum is use of I might describe as Bayesian epistemology, where you have a lot of subjective statements and people assign a confidence, and the one person's doing that, and from that a truth sort of would be crowdsourced somehow, and I might see how that could work for very narrow cases, but if you have my contention is, and this is not to go into the weeds, but I just my sort of first impression would be like, if you have actually some really good forecasters using this technique and to predict something difficult to predict in the future, like the risk of runaway AI in some manner, they would just put in like, I don't know, which is like 50% or whatever it is that they use for like a placeholder, which is I don't know, one way or the other, I can't tell. So you have a model where it's just it cannot be would not be decisive, and it would be pretty confident for things that we have very good experience with already, and it would not be that useful. That's obviously but that's, again, it's a philosophical assumption that people make, and it's a good thing that they make it explicitly, the sort of Bayesian epistemology. They name it, that's what it is, they describe how it works. But and again, I'm not an expert in this space at all, but my sort of instinct is that it might not work for a lot of sort of use cases in the real world. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, yeah, I don't know how far I want to go. I'd love to have that kind of deep conversation on that, because that's one of the things I'm trying to do. And one of the things the caveats that I do need to say early, because that is the intuition, is that, yeah, this won't work for probably even a majority of decisions. But you know what? We're still arguing about whether climate change is happening, and or like whether it's let's take a simpler one, whether it's healthy to eat vegan long term. That should be a scientific answer. That shouldn't be an opinion. There should be no heuristics in that. We should be able to look at the information we know and say,
Yeah.
based on the studies that have been done, it is or it isn't, right? Or how confident are we in it? It's not always
And
right?
yeah, maybe add your own sort of if there's any variation between the humans, I assume
Right.
if there isn't,
So that would
but
be
let's
handled
say
in
put in
the
your own
confidence
sort of
interval, right?
yeah.
Yeah, because there will be some people that have medical. So you'd have to caveat, and this is where
Yeah.
here's the other point that I should have gone into.
Yeah.
Not point, but thing to think about is that, yeah, it would be for the average human without any medical complication. So you have this very, very detailed, narrow claim, and then then the system can add value. Although I would contend to say that if anyone has a debate without that narrow of a claim, then they're really wasting everyone's time. But yeah, so so one of the interesting things that I think Jamie would agree with, and I, when I'm doing this, and one of the challenges with machine learning and this sort of thing, is that when we properly steelman a whole argument, and maybe this doesn't happen for the lower things, is that the phrasing that we come up with does not exist at all. So that phrase has never been uttered by a person. The best steelmans have not been done. So you have no training data off of what the actual goal is yet.
Yeah, if you're trying to create them using machine learning.
Yeah. So where does yours kind of, is it just pulling the?
No, I so my at least the way I'm planning to tackle it right now is extremely I want to focus on the end user experience first. So I want to sort of say I'll give you an example, right? So I just got into I discovered I mean, I was sort of ambiently aware of it, but I kind of got into these sort of strong long-termism arguments that people make, right? And I found myself reading a couple of blog posts, listening to some really smart people talk on a podcast or two, and what I wish I had is being able to explore that argument, sort of the probably a couple, 1, 2, 3 Steelman. I don't know how, the whole sort of area, but let's say 2 or 3 Steelman main arguments that people are making, and just see also what is the best if you're trying to convince me to adopt that viewpoint. I'd like to have as this sort of connected papers view where I can see, hey, this is the best version of this argument. I can link it to a source. Was it said on a podcast? Just this blog. I can just quickly reference it. The way you can ask a Google question, click on the link, and Google takes you to the page and scrolls down and highlights that's using the BERT language model to do that, which is just similarity. So question and answering a task. Which is very cool, but sort of I want to have that experience where I can quickly sort of see, okay, I see where this argument sort of sits, and I can quickly see what are the main sort of objections that people have, to these arguments. I can do it in a span of like 30 minutes. I can be reasonably, up to speed. At least I might have a general overview, and I might have 2 or 3 leads that I want to a couple of like podcasts that I added to my, queue, and articles that I got saved if I want to review them later. But for someone reasonably smart who knows the general kind of area, that's the sort of within you want to explore something, you only have 30 minutes. You should be able to get into have a good overview and be able to embed that argument into your own kind of mind map, so to speak. But it's sort of I've been reading these blog posts, podcasts. It's all in the same. It's all in the same space. There is no people do obviously they're very thoughtful people, so they do try to Steelman and position and just work out like why wouldn't we care about future generations? But these are not real Steelman. It's kind of like because they have their own philosophical viewpoint where they value certain things, so they just make these sort of arguments where they're sort of the quasi opposing arguments, but really they sit within the same. They just they're kind of based on practicality. Well, we don't know how this would work out. We don't have enough information, or this is how could we make decisions based on that. So it's just like the argument. Yeah, we granted the premise, the basic premise. We just worry about the executing it. Whereas it took me a while to actually come across a source that a podcast that was really good discussing this topic from and they were very opposed to it on a very philosophical level, just saying it's sort of outright immoral, and here's why, and made very good points. But I couldn't. It was not indexed. It's not somewhere where I could find. And just ideally, I should, reading the blog post on long-termism, I should be able to see like highlighted passage either through Chrome extension, or maybe it was already built into the publishing platform that they were using. I could just see like, hey, here's more where that came from. These arguments, let's see, the perspective of philosopher, X, and there's in the book that he wrote, and a couple of seminal blog posts that you can look at as well, and here is some opposing views as well. So that would shorten the time that would have taken me to convince me, like from that point of view, if they are really making that argument, it's a really good argument, sound argument. Because even reading these very good blog posts, listening to podcasts, I still had this feeling in the back of my head where there's something missing there. I don't have the time to just really reflect on it for a few hours and just see why it's bugging me. But there was something missing, something unaddressable, some sort of hidden premise that people took for granted, and I didn't quite agree with. Or maybe I did, but I just needed some clarification, some sort of put it explicitly. I'm sure you've had this experience many times where you sort of read something. This is very definitely it's the strongest if you can cast your mind back to listening to some of the early TED Talks. Now I think we're immune to that, but it's almost too good to be true. So you've got an extremely well rehearsed and polished version, like 17 minutes or something like that, with powerful visuals and a very good story arc, where that sort of takes you from some evidence and is building this compelling story, a bit like Malcolm Gladwell does this. He's probably the best person in the world.
Yeah.
And it's almost, you read a book by Malcolm Gladwell or listen to some of these, the best sort of TED Talks, and you'll and usually they come up to, the conclusion is, this little obvious thing that we just sort of, we're not doing, but if we could just do that, then, millions of people would be saved, or like this huge problem would disappear, or this, and you just, you're left thinking this just can't be that simple, because usually these are very complex topics. So even if this person is right, in fact they might be, but you want to see what is the opposing view, and once you're comfortable with the opposing view sort of not really doing it for you, then you think, okay, I think there is something there. But that usually you kind of present it with just one side like that. So
I think
that's where I would start.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things that got us all into the space that's in there, is that there was no easy place to go to find both sides of the argument really well laid out. Now there is stuff like procon.org that was recently bought by Britannica, but they only do like 5 or 10, 5 on each side or something like that, and it doesn't, and they're very shallow, so it doesn't seem to like help too much. Like, and there's not like where you're talking about where you have resources to dig deeper into those topics, but that's kind of one of the spaces that made an attempt at this. And then, Kielo, just because it's a gathering space of people of opposing viewpoints, so you tend to have everything there. It's just kind of messy because it's a whole bunch of individual humans doing things. And then what was the other one? Change My View is interesting. Have you seen the Reddit site Change My View?
Not in depth, but I saw it.
Yeah. So those are the places that we've found that are kind of trying to. Those are some ways of addressing this problem, to where every place you go these days is biased in one way or another and doesn't do a really good job of laying out the complete landscape. And I guess my project is one step beyond that. So like Jamie's done a really good job, and she hasn't released it yet, and I'm looking forward to when she does. But I know that she has over 4,000 claims in her map. So that's a lot of very in-depth kind of, and they're all Steelman all the way down. So so that'll be interesting to see. But then my step past that is like, okay, so you have this tree of claims. Two people reading all 4,000 claims are still going to come to two different conclusions because they have to use heuristics to draw a conclusion. So in some of the spaces in there, not all 4,000, but on a few of those claims, some sort of logical math can be waypoints to guide the person through their thinking, and also to determine where the two people are making different assumptions or different conclusions, and then have them be able to find that quickly and debate it. So it's reducing the level of effort needed for two people to have an effective debate. Because right now you're just kind of all over the place. I don't know where you disagree with me out of those 4,000 claims, but if we have numbers and not just the problem with the Bayesian and stuff where people are putting numbers in there is it's putting a stopper on the debate. At whatever point you have reasons why you rated that at a 65%, but you're not bothering to talk about them. So at any point that someone puts a number on it, you've put an artificial limit on the debate. So mine gets around that by making to where everything that you put in is an assumption unless it has assumptions beneath it. So it's always considered 100% true. So if you're not at 100%, you need to say why. But coming back to yours, in the end, is it going to be just like the top level main points, or is there going to be any sort of argument tree underneath it?
No, I think there's going to be sort of
although you could recursively go into it and run the analysis on the sub ones and see the sub points, right?
Yeah. But I think I sort of imagine people kind of interacting with one kind of a small amount of just the basic Steelman representation. If they want to go dig deeper, they can, and look for look for other nodes and look at, where it might be, connecting to other, other arguments, maybe they have, two arguments have a shared source. So you can sort of, go down, but if you just want to focus on the argument itself and see what similar arguments. So for me, machine learning is just the sort of bread and butter similarity of arguments. That's the main application I see. I can see. And beyond that, I have ideas, but I wouldn't rely on it to, establish. You could look at the graph itself and see how cohesive it is and stuff like that. I think what you could do is bits Grammarly, and I try to see like what already works and in a real product. So Grammarly, for instance, if you're familiar with the spell checker, they can highlight your text if it's kind of going around in circles, if it's not very concise. I can see like you're using a lot of, so you can rate a quality of text quite well, just so if it's short and to the point. And you could even do it with old-fashioned NLP, like are your sentences, there's some rules of thumb that you could implement for like concise writing. Noun phrases, the use of passive voice and stuff, stuff like that you could, and that's just like little things that could indicate someone. That could be layer on top, but I'm just sort of giving you an indication where I'm thinking this how it relates to machine learning. It's definitely more just focused on search, similarity, and things like that. So it's not a huge role for that, but it's a key role because you have this similarity matching where you couldn't really do that reliably before. Semantic search, which the kind of can help surface similar statements and claims, which is very, very useful. So that alone is a huge one, and I know that this works very well, and if it doesn't, it can be fine-tuned on the domain to the point where it's very good.
What you might find interesting in that area, and this is probably a little bit different than your initial use case, but it's interesting. So Jamie Joyce and Society Library, one thing they did is they take direct quotes from TV and radio and blogs and internet and papers, scientific papers. So they'll take the direct quotes. They have that linked to their Steelman writing. They may even have a rank on which ones are best written. And then they have it to their Steelman, and then they have it linked to the position in the argument. So what's interesting is that there may be a lot of data of humans kind of Steelmanning, examples of human Steelmanning, and humans finding the best argument in a group of a whole bunch of phrases. I don't know actually that she actually says if she ranks those in their clarity. I think somewhere in the data it's there. But that would be very interesting to do some machine learning on, to have that as an additional kind of lever to say, is this a good phrasing of the argument?
Yeah, definitely. This is my impression as well. Like also the level of English. So where like fifth grader, sixth grader. I mean, the lower the better, essentially. So you can put you can make reference to concepts, but if you use jargon, if you use long sentences, you're hiding something. Like, to me, it's just, if you read a book by someone I don't agree with, but I otherwise very respect a lot. Peter Singer, is one of his most recent book. I think that's another edition. It's essentially it's his whole argument about altruism and how you kind of should give away more of your money, and like, dying children in Africa, and like, walking past dying children, anyway. Very good, but he, like, one of the main virtues is that he's very blunt. I mean, this is, he states his views very clearly. Like, you're not mistaken what he thinks, and he thinks some radical stuff. Like, it's and he takes stuff that a lot of people kind of buy into and takes them to logical conclusion, and a very like incisive stories, well to the point. Like, his whole, he's not messing around, and he's not trying to also pretend to prove that he's a smart person, he's a trained philosopher, and making some reference, obscure references, anything like that. He's just saying, like, hey, this is good, you think it's good, well, why aren't you doing X? If you think this is good, why aren't you doing more of it? Or why what's the difference between doing it here in Africa? Like, things like that. Like, if you're giving away money is good to charity, how do you weigh it against some optional luxuries in your life if you already live better than the Louis XIV, things, provably so. And it's awesome, because now I don't happen to agree with him on actually the fundamental stuff, but if you accept his premises, it's pretty airtight. Like, the argument he's making, and he's not pretending to like make another argument and like, or get you in a sort of emotional way where all these sort of, he doesn't engage. You can tell he's an honest, at least from the, I don't know much about him, but just from his writing, comes across a very honest thinker. So there's not many people like that, but it's, if you could in fact have sort of the claims that float around the world, if you can put them in as high quality as Peter Singer does for his work, it's someone like the kind of arguments would score very highly. If you were to apply our sort of clarity ranking, it would be very high, because the premises, in fact, if you read this book, there's at one point, I think it's into chapter 2, it's got, here are my the 3 main premises, number 1, number 2, and number 3, and he just explicitly lists them. So that's unusual, but very, very much appreciated. And it's if you it's extremely good writing, extremely honest, and a very powerful argument. But that's not the usual way of arguing. The usual one is just appeal to like a group, and you're a bad person if you whatever, all the usual sort of informal fallacies and things like that. But I think there's some there's stuff that could be done, implemented, that could actually work reasonably well, because a human can tell. You can train an intelligent high schooler to tell, here's a high quality argument and here's a bad quality argument, and it's just, you can just scan it and see, just by the features. You don't even have to understand what the person is saying. You can just sort of scan the features of the language, so that they're using, and how they're structuring the claim. So I think something like that is coming, definitely, because it will be a very useful tool.
Yeah. So what are your next steps? You mentioned making kind of a UI to experiment with. Is that kind of your next thing?
Yeah, UI, and at the same time, writing out quite a few more of these sort of Steelman from the kind of general domain that I'm interested in, just to prove the concept that how much work does it take. I'm assuming this would be done by individuals. It is not be done automatically at all. It might be aided. There might be a toolkit, tooling that aids you doing that. Surfacing possible claims, statements. There could be some AI doing that, but ultimately it would be people doing it, and sort of, so it would be summarizing main gists of arguments and linking them. So it would doing a bit of sort of critical thinking, work like you would, if you were to take a critical thinking class in high school. That's what I'll be probably doing as well in parallel, and seeing how can I put them in a way, represent them in a way that could be easily digestible by people, and how do I link them? There's some of I need to work out how do arguments link to sources, and how do arguments link to opposite arguments. So but I want to keep it very simple and very flat, because I want to essentially make it obvious to whoever is looking at it. And I don't mind being super, I think, different to how you're approaching it. I want to keep it very flat and very fuzzy, and the trade-off is like you could put something completely ridiculous against Steelman, flat Earth if you wanted to. It's just we would over time. My contention is again that you would struggle to do that well. One of the reasons that is false is that there's so many sort of like holes in the argument, but you could do that. It's not a problem. So I would only worry about that as a sort of second order effect, and not I wouldn't try to address it up front. So yeah, essentially the designing the the data, the data domain, however you want to call it, the model behind this project, but designing in a way that is very sort of flat and can be easily explored, and how it's represented on in an interface. So I'm still quite early on, but I don't want to set any deadlines for myself, but I'm slowly making progress.
So I guess I didn't realize how much of a human element in the final Steelmanning was in this. I guess I was biasing towards seeing the word machine language in there somewhere. Is that then, do you see it kind of like this would be the way I'm doing it, which is kind of like we consider ourselves a news organization, and so we have trained people doing the Steelmanning, or is this going to be more of a community effort? Or have you not decided yet?
Yeah, no, I think it's community effort. So I would be counting on people. Again, this is a very early hypothesis that this is in some way an intrinsically satisfying process where you can get summarizing arguments and then getting. That's why I'm a bit like GitHub, a bit like open source, Stack Overflow. There's a kind of a social credit sort of dynamic where you kind of people who are really good at doing that sort of work. That's why one of the possible leverage points is an already established community around a forum, discussion forum, stuff like that.
Yeah. Interesting.
My headphones just died. Hope you can still hear me.
All right. Well, we're running to the end of our meeting, and I got something else coming up. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of cover, or questions for me? I do suggest if you're talking about a data format, the Canonical Debate Lab, we're getting together to create a data format, although ours is intrinsically hierarchical. So it may not be that useful, but some of the things about how we're documenting what kind of, in our case, claims might be of interest to you.
Yeah, definitely. Let's keep talking, and if you happy to give feedback on anything that you want me to take a look at, and likewise, when I have something to share, I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Definitely, it would be great to get your sort of eyes on it just at some point.
And if you want, the Canonical Debate Lab has a Slack channel, so you can kind of just see what people are talking about. We're pretty open, so I can send you a link to that if you like.
Yeah, if you can send a quick invite, that'll be really good.
Yeah, I'll find it. always a challenge to keep moving the button to invite people. But great, yeah.
Great.
So yeah, keep in touch. Feel free to reach out if I could be of any help, and we'll get you in the Canonical Debate Lab. And I'm sure people would be willing to give you feedback there as well, and you can kind of keep an eye on what we're doing and see how much of that overlaps. We're very loose knit, so no, like we don't have a single project. We're all working on our own stuff. But it's a good community. They're very supportive.
No, it's great. It's great that there's already, you know, managed to find a group of people who already have been thinking about it and, you know, doing a lot of the groundwork for it. And, you know, there's you know, it's quite a deep subject, and it's all about the challenges. So how to crystallize it in a very simple, or maybe not so simple product. You know, I don't know. There's probably different approaches that could be taken, equally valid. So we'll see what works. But it's very good to talk to you. And yeah, let's keep talking.
Great. All right. I'll talk to you
Take
later.
care. Bye bye.